This is the part where we really get to hear from the voices most affected by parents who've been incarcerated. And I've got the pleasure, absolute pleasure, of two youth here on our panel. And I'd like for each of them to introduce themselves, and then we'll talk about your stories. So,
my name is Tracy Pike. I'm 14 years old, and I was 9 years old when my mom was incarcerated. I was taken into the foster care system, and I was in two homes. I was with my 6-month-old brother, and in my first home, it was pretty much my job to take care of him, and then going into the second home, it was a complete different environment. They took care of him, and I didn't like it, but it was their job, so I got through it, and 8 months later, me and my little brother went back home, and everything has been great since then.
That's great. What about you, Annalie?
My name's Annalie. I'm just turned 21, and I was probably a year or 2 years old. It was my father that was incarcerated, and there was a restraining order put between us, and I was not allowed to have any contact with him, which in effect damaged the father-daughter connection I was actually, or still currently, searching for. And he recently just got out of jail, and I had kind of a rough time trying to get back in contact with him to establish some sort of relationship, but I've been in several homes and had a lot of problems with instability because of, because of my father's absence, for one, and mother's absence and neglect and abuse as well.
Wow. Okay, so Tracy, let me start with you. Can you talk about the experience of what it was like for you when you learned that your mom had been incarcerated? What was going on? What were you thinking and feeling?
I was actually in school, and they called me down to the principal's office to tell me that my mom was in jail and that she was going to stay in jail for a number of years, and that me and my little brother were going to be either adopted out or sent to live with our fathers. And the first thought that I had was, no, this isn't happening. It can't be happening. She didn't do anything wrong. I can't go live with my dad. I don't know my dad all that well, and Destin's never seen his dad. I didn't want any of it to be happening, but it had been happening, and the social worker at the time took us straight to the hospital. After the hospital, we spent hours in the hospital doing blood tests and making sure that there was no substance in our blood and all that good stuff. And then we went to our first foster home, and the reality hit that I wasn't going to be living with my mom anymore, and that I wasn't going to get to see her for a number of years.
Now, Annalie, you were in a different situation because you were very young when your father was incarcerated. And so how was this introduced to you? How was it talked about? How was it discussed?
I didn't really know that, what had gone on with my family until I was around 7.5, 8 years old. I was placed with my grandfather. I think it might have been my 7th or 8th placement at that time. And I was allowed to have contact with him because my grandfather, it was his son, so he thought, well, I don't think my son did anything wrong, and there's no reason for this restraining order, so I'm going to let him contact his daughter. And then I kind of learned a little bit that he was in jail, but I was never really told until later on, and that was actually at a visit with my mother. I pulled out a picture of the only picture, in fact, that I have of my father, and showed it to her and let her know that I had gotten letters, and she freaked out and stopped that contact. And the biggest impact that it's had on me is I didn't have a father there, and he's been probably one of the people in my life that should have been one of the most important, but has the least effect on me because he wasn't there, and he's kind of a stranger, and I wish that that wasn't so, because I would have been a little more stable with my father around, but people make stupid choices and get into jail sometimes.
So now, Tracy, for you, I want to kind of go down the road a little bit. What did you need to know that was most important to you when your mom was in jail?
The thing that I most wanted to hear that would have helped me so much more was I'm going to see my mom again, that I'm going to get to be with her again, that me and Destin aren't going to live with our dads, that we're going to live with my mom, and that it's going to be okay. And I heard it every once in a while, but just being able to hear that a lot more would have helped.
And how long was it from the point that your mom was incarcerated to when you got to see her?
I'm going to say a month, I want to say, about that time. And we had a first visit scheduled, but I was told that she didn't show, that she didn't want to come and that she didn't come. But later on down the road, I found out that she did try to come, but my foster mom and the social work at the time had something to do with it, that they tweaked it and made my mom seem like a bad person.
Okay. And how'd that make you feel?
Horrible. That my mom didn't want to, that she didn't want any part of mine and Destin's lives, that she didn't care, that she didn't want to see us at all. It wasn't a good feeling at all.
So in the experience, and you're in care for a while, right? You're
About 8 months.
8 months, okay. So what was the most, considering the situation you were in, what was the most helpful to you regarding your mom? What was helpful to you?
When I was able to visit her.
Visit her, okay.
Visiting her was the thing that helped me the most.
Okay. What was that like the first time you saw your mom?
The first time I saw my mom, no words can explain it. It was a joyful time that I was actually seeing her for the first time in a long time, and that she was fat were my first thoughts. She was so much bigger than the last time I saw her, but it was okay. I loved being around her at that time. There are no words that can explain the first visit.
One last question, and I'm going to move on to Annalie, and that is, for you, what was the lowest time for you? What was the lowest point in your life in this whole process?
The holidays. When I wasn't able to see her, the lowest point was when my foster parents were trying to be the parents and say they didn't even acknowledge my mom or say, yeah, we're having a good time, your mom says hi. They didn't try to help me have contact with my mom. There was no restraining order. There was no saying that I couldn't have contact with her, and they didn't even try. They didn't even want my mom to have contact with me, and that was the lowest point, that they didn't care.
So, Annalie, so you're in a bit of a different situation, but if you could have heard from your father, okay, if you were able to hear from your father, for you, what was the most important thing you needed to hear or need to know?
Probably that when I was in foster care and all the crazy stuff was going on, there was a big negative thing with both of my parents, and especially because I had an incarcerated parent and because there were a history of just crime and drug abuse and all that. It would have been nice to, it was nice to hear back from him through the letters that we communicated through. He would give me good advice, stay out of trouble, be nice to people. He tried doing some of the things that I guess he felt was necessary to do for that short span of time that we connected. But
so your father clearly made some choices here that took him away from you? Did you have the sense that your father loved you?
No, because I didn't really know of him until I was a little bit older. And the memories that I had were not very positive, and there were a lot of people in my childhood that were male, kind of fitting his description, that had a negative impact on my life. And I didn't really get to know him until I was about 8 years old, and then it was cut short. So I pretty much am still a stranger to my father because of that.
Okay. So Tracy, what could, quote, the system, okay, what could the system have done differently that would have helped you in this process, that would have been helpful to you, that would have made things be better for you?
The system could have done a lot of things differently for my case specifically, which is the only case that I know of really that I can have any feedback off of. They could have given me a better home. In my eyes, they placed me in a bad home the first time around. And then the social workers that they had, I went through a number of social workers, and within a short amount of time, they could have chosen their social workers better. They could have planned the visits out better. They could have done so many things better.
How could they have planned the visits out better?
Not letting my social worker at the time and my foster parents get in the way of visiting my mom. They could have notified me personally if that was possible. I think that they could have notified me, and if I could have been involved in the decisions a lot more, I think it would have helped a lot.
Okay, so basically being more informed about what's going on, and being led into the decision-making process would be important for you.
Yeah.
Okay. What would you tell other children, other youth who are in the same boat as you were? What would you tell them that you think would be helpful to them?
Everything will be okay in the end. That even though things are bad right now and that things may get worse, it'll get better. It always gets worse before it gets great, so.
It's darkest before the dawn.
Darkest before the dawn. And Annalie, you've had a lot of experience in the system. Matter of fact, and right now you're in transition, 21st birthday. So what would you tell other youth, or the system for that matter, of what they would need to know that would be helpful to them?
One of the things I would probably say to the system and, well, everybody involved with the system and involved with interacting with children with incarcerated parents is don't make them feel like just because their parents are incarcerated that it's their fault or that they're going down the same path, because that was part of what happened to me, and I was also incarcerated, and I was pretty much just at my lowest point at that point. I was probably about 7-8 years ago, because I was like, well, great, I'm in jail, my dad's in jail, who knows where my mom is? Everybody's like, well, you're just pretty much not going anywhere. And you kind of have to keep them a little positive, because it gets difficult when you have such a trauma-filled life to really live it positively in the way that you want it when you have so many people that are always negative. Always, always, always negative. Don't be negative. Be positive. You want them to rise above where they're at, not follow in the same footsteps. And you can't just do that by just telling them to go somewhere. You have to guide them and offer support, and offer the parents support too, because everybody makes mistakes, everybody has problems. Don't prejudge a person, especially because there's parents that are incarcerated for reasons that they should be incarcerated for, and other times not really stuff that would really be that bad. But.
So a couple themes here, and then we'll wrap up, and that is, so for you, kind of a message of hope.
Yeah.
So, hopeful. And the second thing is include you in on the process. Be able to have a conversation with you about what's really going on. You two are absolutely terrific. I want to thank you so much for being here today. And, you know, I'll tell you, I've got a lot of hope. Thank you.